Learners, we are discussing here chemical toxicology, and the previous lecture we had discussed about what are the chemical toxicology, different types of branches, and we had discussed about some different toxic elements with examples. Now we are discussing here trace elements. So these are the trace elements which are present in a small amount in human biological system, and these elements which are present like calcium, magnesium, iron, phosphorus, zinc and sodium, these are needed for many physiological and biological process in plants and animals. Learners, as I told you, everywhere we can see chemistry. So most frequently occurring chemicals in living organism, because we are also made up of the chemicals, chemistry also inside us. So the most frequently chemicals in living organisms are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. So in this PPT you can see here the oxygen, which comprise 68% of human body by mass. So, and this oxygen is present mainly in the form of water, and it is the oxygen which is present around 68% in our body mass can use in respiration and also very important for our many biological reactions. Similarly, carbon comprise 18.5% of our body, and it is used for the structural formation and also for the formation of many organic compounds. Similarly, hydrogen is present 9.5, around 10% of our body mass, and it is also used for the formation of many organic molecules and also exist in the form of with water. Similarly, calcium, nitrogen. So calcium is present in 1.5%, and everybody knows it is very important for our teeth and bone. So these metals are present in trace amount. Phosphorus is a very reactive metal. So always remember, in our human body the phosphorus cannot found in free state. The phosphorus can found in the form of lipids, phospholipids, and DNA, RNA and ATP, all these have phosphorus molecules, elements. Potassium, which is very important, which is also found in 0.4% of our body mass, and it is very important element for nerve transmission. Similarly, sodium, chlorine, magnesium and sulfur. These sulfur is present in very trace amount, 0.04%. So these are the some important elements and the percentage of total body weights. So you can see there are 4 elements in the slide. You can see there are 4 elements make up 96.2% of our body weight. These are oxygen, carbon, hydrogen and nitrogen. These are the 4 very important elements, and rest of are the trace elements. So now we will discuss about the deficiency of trace element. What are the deficiency? If these trace, our body have low amount of these trace element, what happen? So if there is a iron deficiency, correction of latent iron deficiency and resistance to infection. Zinc also present in a trace amount. It is used for wound healing, taste disorder, resistance to infections and immune function, retardation and gonadal hypoplasia. Similarly, chromium is also present in trace amount. It is used for the correction of carbohydrate metabolism. Selenium is also very important trace element which is present in our body, that is used in anti-cancer activity and also prevention of heart diseases. So these are some important trace element. Fluorine is also a very important element which is present in our body, and it is used for the prevention of dental caries. And iodine is also important trace element, and it is used for the correction of iodine deficient goiter. Everybody knows the goiter is a cause of deficiency of that flow iodine. And now there are a valid confusion in respect of elements. Where will be the line drawn between the essential limit and toxic limit of these trace elements? So many of trace elements listed on hazardous are essential dietary trace elements. It is required for the normal growth and development of animals and human beings. So he was the scientist used to term concentration window to draw the arbitrary lines of demarcation about the quantity of trace elements. Now, toxic elements present in water. Which type of toxic elements present in water? Learners, water is indispensable for the existence of life on earth. About 97% of water on globe is saline, around 97%, and that water found in ocean, seas, and only 3% is fresh water. So you can understand, only 3% water is the drinkable water or fresh water on the earth. Nearly 69% of total fresh water is held in continental and mountain glaciers. 30% of water is groundwater and reservoir, present in reservoir also, and remaining portion of water is stored in surface like lakes, rivers and swamps. Learners, exploitation of water is the main cause of water pollution, and you can understand around the 70% of water is used in agricultural farming. 11% of water is used for the domestic purposes, and industry also use around 19% of water. So the water exploitation of water resources for industrial usage, agriculture usage, electricity generation, transport and human activities create huge contamination problem in water. So these are the main sources which exploit the water, that is transportation, that is industrial waste. Now toxic elements in water. What are the toxic elements which present in water? Toxic chemical present in water can be pathogens, inorganic compounds, organic compounds and macroscopic compounds. One example, chlorine, which is a element, is added to the water in supply water to kill the germs and pathogens. But when this chlorine mixes with other organic compound which is already present in water due to the exploitation, so when this chlorine react with other organic compounds can create harmful products and they can form trihalomethanes. So these are the certain elements: aluminium, calcium, iron, magnesium, nitrate, pH and TDS. So it is recommended by WHO. So you can see on your screen, the WHO permits only 0.2 milligrams per liter of aluminium metal should be present in water. Similarly, calcium 75 milligrams per liter should be present in the water. So iron also. So these are the permissible elements which is recommended by WHO. So there are some other elements we called potentially toxic elements found naturally in soil, water and sediments. These potentially toxic elements are arsenic, cadmium, chromium, copper, fluorine, lead, mercury, molybdenum, nickel and selenium, also zinc. So these are the potentially toxic elements which found naturally in the water, soils and sediments. Learners, the toxicity depends upon the concentration, and the potential toxicity is due to the possibility of these elements, of those elements, to accumulate over time and above certain limits to be harmful to the humans, animals and to the environment as well. One example I would like to discuss here, the Bundelkhand region in India. In Bundelkhand region there is a geochemical appraisal of fluoride, and there is waterborne fluorosis. That waterborne fluorosis is that the water of Bundelkhand region contain fluoride, that is, and that fluoride cause waterborne fluorosis, and it is due to ingestion of fluoride rich water in body. Although Government of India providing the fresh water, drinkable water there, but there is a many cases of fluorosis we can say in the Bundelkhand region, and the excess of fluoride, if greater than 1.05 milligrams per liter, can cause dental and skeletal deformities. It is due to excess of fluoride into the water. Now, another cause, toxic chemicals which present in water, is pesticides. So, there are more than 1000 pesticides used around the world to ensure food is not damaged by the pest. You can understand how the food is important for us. We are using pesticides over more than 1000 to protect our food from the pest damage. So, many pesticides soluble in water, and the Cornell University in a research, State University, clean up the groundwater contaminated by pesticide, and they states that it was unusually impossible and great risk to the human health. So, groundwater which is contaminated by pesticide, it is very impossible to eliminate that pesticide from the groundwater. So, these are the common pesticides. Malathion, generally we used in our houses also for killing the pest on our flowering plants. Malathion, which is also very toxic chemical, it is a pesticide, herbicides used at home planting insecticides. Methomyl is used to control spider and ticks. Chloropyritos, although it is prohibition of the use of vegetables, but still people use these pesticides. So, these are few name of pesticides and herbicides. So, the pesticides and its residues like nitrate and phosphate transport to contaminate groundwater and fresh water, which is supplies over a large geographical area, and it emits hazardous pollutants and volatile organic compounds to the groundwater. So, the pesticides, which are the chemicals, these are the toxic chemicals, and lungs may be exposed to pesticide by inhalation, airborne droplets or vapors. So, farmers generally use in their fields to control the pest or to protect the crops from the damage from the pesticides. On your screen you can see that there are name of pesticides, number of pesticides, herbicides, fungicides. Another very important topic we will discuss here, biochemical effect of lead. If the concentration of lead is exceeds in the human body, lead toxicity happened, and this is also called plumbism. And lead is abundant metal in nature. In atmosphere, major source of airborne lead is consumption of leaded petrol or gasoline. So, the transportation vehicles is the main source of exposure of lead into the atmosphere, because lead is present in gasoline or petrol. So the lead is added in the form of tetraalkyl lead, primarily methyl lead or dimethyl tetramethyl lead. It is mixed with 1,2-dibromoethane. Lead is emitted into the air, can be inhaled and ingested through contact with contaminated soil, and street dust and roadside soils enriched with lead with concentration of order of 1000 to 4000 milligram kilogram per inverse on busy streets. So you can understand. So on your screen you can see the pollution of the vehicular pollution. So how the lead release from the vehicles. So that lead releases from the transport can mix with dust, food, air, water and soil, and we can expose from all these sources. Now what are the primary sources of lead? Today's are that are the stationary source, lead smelters. During the for preparation of leads, smelting of lead release into the atmosphere or into the soil. Waste incinerators, utilities, lead acid batteries manufacturing, metal processing, copper smelters, cement manufacturers, glass, iron and steel production all release lot of lead into the atmosphere. And learners, everyone have crystal glasses in their houses, in their homes that contains lead. So you can understand how the leads are releasing into the environment from these stationary sources. And it may be noted that most of the lead intake by a typical city dweller is from their diet, 200 to 30 new grams per day. Air and water adding to further 10 to 15 new gram per day. Each of this total intake is 200 gram, and from the total intake, it is very important fact, 200 new gram of lead is excreted, while 25 new gram of lead is stored in bones each day. So how much we are exposed to the lead? So these elements are silent killers. Learners, lead poisoning usually occurs over a period of months or years, and it can cause severe mental and physical improvement. The US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, monitors the blood lead level in United States, and they found that the US population of children ages between 1 to 5 years who are in the top 2.5% of children, when tested for lead in their blood, 0.5 microgram per decimeter of lead are present in their blood. So children are the most susceptible to the effect of lead. These are the data released by United States Environmental Protection Agency. Major biochemical effect of lead. Suppose if we inhale the lead or exposed ourselves lead through the food chain. So the major biochemical effect of lead is it interfere with the heme synthesis. Heme synthesis is a blood synthesis, and it leads to hematological damage, because the lead excess of lead inhibits several enzymes which involved in the overall process of hemoglobin synthesis. So the lead induced anemia, and it most affect the delta aminolevulinic acid, ALDA dehydrase. So lead inhibits different enzymes in blood synthesis, hemoglobin synthesis, the amino levulinic acid dehydrate, porphyrinogen oxidase and ferrochelates. So these are the three important enzymes which affected by the excess of lead in our blood. So the lead inhibits, you can see here the diagram. Here lead inhibits the enzymes ALA dehydrase enzyme, and it is not proceeds further to form profibrinogen, disturb the respiratory pigments. So the lead does not permit utilization of oxygen and glucose for life sustaining energy productions. So it is a very difficult for survival if lead enters into our body into excess of limits. Lead has long been known as a neurotoxic and immunotoxic heavy metals in human and animals including fish. Elevated lead levels more than 0.5 to 0.8 ppm part per million in blood causes kidney dysfunction and finally brain damage. One example, it was a famous painter, Vincent William van Gogh, famous Dutch painter, and he was suffered from of acute intermittent porphyria exposed to paint with high content of lead, and this is the famous painting, the Starry Night, all on canvas painting by this scientist. He painted this painter. He painted this painting in June 1889. So lead poisoning can be cured by how the lead poisoning cured. So there are some treatments. It is cured by treatment with chelating agents which build Pb2 plus. When we add the calcium chelate is used in the solution, is fed to the victim of lead poisoning. So the lead 2 plus displays calcium 2 plus from the chelates and lead chelate rapidly excreted in the urine. So this is the some treatment for curing the lead poisoning. Now biochemical effects of mercury. It is also very toxic elements. Learners, mercury is a heavy liquid and toxic metals. Mercury can enter the body through inhalation or skin absorption or through our diets also. One example, one case study, Minamata disease by mercury poisoning. Minamata is a small town, fishing town in Japan, and in 1953 to 1960 in Japan more than 100 people lost their lives and thousands were permanently paralyzed by eating the mercury contaminated fish. So it was the cause of other chemical toxicity. Mercury amount was deposited into that bay, and in the form of the fish eat that methyl mercury, and from the fish the humans contaminated. Now it is the Minamata disease, some cases. So the sea fish in the bay area were found to contain 27 to 102 ppm of mercury in the form of methyl mercury. So the methyl mercury dumping first known case where natural bioaccumulation in the fish of toxic methyl mercury which damage large population, especially water populations. So it was later discovered by CEC Corporation had dumped estimated 27 tons of mercury compounds in Minamata Bay of Japan, and which causes the mercury poisoning the peoples who are living around that bay area. So it is the bioaccumulation of methyl mercury. So the from food chain, that methyl mercury passes to the human body. Symptoms of methyl mercury or mercury poisoning includes headache, tremors, insomnia, loss of memory, weakened muscles, and this is a source which WHO Mercury and Health. Certain thermostats, fever thermometers, and even novelty jewelry can possess the risk of mercury exposure. In 1972, another case of mercury poisoning. In 1972, a large outbreak of poisoning caused by consumption of seeds dressed with organomercury compound in Iraq, and it was the case of again chemical toxicity. So, the grain that wheat grains were treated with methyl mercury fungicide was imported to the Iraq. In nature, mercury occurs as a trace component of many minerals, continental rocks, and containing an average of about 80 parts per billion of mercury. Principal ore is cinnabar. So, cinnabar is principal ore of mercury, that is HGS. Fossil fuels, coals, lignite contain about 100 parts per billion of mercury. Natural abundance in soil is 0.1 part per million. The largest consumption of mercury is in the production of electrical apparatus. Example, mercury vapor lamps, electrical switches, mercury batteries. And the agricultural industry using a large number of fungicides for seed treatment, for seed dressing, which having a methyl mercury. So, these are the some fungicides: methyl mercury nitrile, methyl mercury diamide, ethyl mercury chloride. So, these are seed dressing compounds causing widespread dispersal of mercury in the human body. So, the impact of seed dressing is enormous since it is applied to a large volume of seed. Mercury enters the environment mainly through the human activities. Sewage, elephant sometimes contains up to 10 times the level of mercury in natural water, that is 0.0012 to 0.001 parts per million. Once the mercury is absorbed on the sediments of water bodies and stream, then slowly released into the water, and it constitutes a reservoir, and it causes chronic pollution long after the original source of mercury is removed. The toxicity of mercury depends upon its chemical species, is very important. The toxic, because every chemical species of mercury is not toxic. Hg mercury, which is a elementary mercury, with inert and non-toxic, but vapors are highly toxic when inhaled. Hg2 plus mercurous ion, which is very low toxic, have low toxicity. Hg2 plus mercuric ion, toxic but not easily transported across the biological membranes. Rhg plus organomercurials, highly toxic, causes irreversible nerve and brain damage, easily transported across the biological process and stored in fat tissues. Similarly, diorganomercurials, low toxicity but can convert it to Rhg, organomercurials, in acidic solution, as in acidic medium. HGS, that is mercuric sulfide, it is highly insoluble and non-toxic, but trapped in the soil in this form. In seafoods, mercury or its salts converted to methyl mercuric by anaerobic methane synthesizing bacterial in water. It facilitated by cobalt 2 enzyme containing vitamin B12 coenzymes. So, this you can see on this reaction, the CH3 bonded to cobalt metal or on the coenzyme is transferred enzymatically by methyl cobalamine to Hg2 plus, and it gives methyl mercury, which is a toxic chemicals. An acidic medium, dimethyl mercury, convert the methyl mercury, enters the food chain through the plant species. Hg concentration builds up at the level of food chain, and mercury has always been part of environment normal and contaminated levels of mercury found in the environment. So the mercury increases up the food chain from source water to the plant, sea plant, then fish, then bigger fish, and finally from the seafoods to the human. So the mercury is naturally occurring substance, but in its natural state, not freely available. Natural activities, volcanoes, human activities release large amount of mercury in the environment, where this mercury can remain in the circulation for thousands of years, a global mercury cycle. And European, it's a fact about given by European Environmental Agency. One important example I would like to discuss here of chemical toxicity is ocean acidification. So, if you usually we know the corals are white in colors, but now the colors of corals are turning to orange because it is case of the chemical toxicity, calcification of fire corals due to the chemical toxicity of oceans, the color of corals changing due to the greenhouse effect, which causes ocean acidification, and the ocean can absorb around 30% of carbon monoxide released into the atmosphere by human activities, by the chemistry and the acidity of sea water that are modified, and the average pH of global ocean surface has fallen very low, and it corresponding to increase about the 26%. So we can say how due to the chemical toxicity, the corals also changing the colors, because the colors of corals are white due to the calcification, due to the formation of calcium carbonate. But when the acidity of sea level is in decreases, the enzymatic reactions takes place, biochemical reaction takes place, and it reduces the calcification and turn the corals into brown or red color. So today in this part we had discussed about different types of toxic chemicals, how the lead affect our biological system. Also we had seen there mercury exposure. Thank you.